Hi guys and welcome back to the Bike Cave. Today we are going to discuss about some key specs that make the XC Cycling slave cylinders unique and at the same time affect their price tag. Before we begin, I have to say that this is the last one before the official release of the XC Cycling slave cylinders, and so it's your last chance to take part to our giveaway to win a set of XC Cycling slave cylinders of your choice. To do so, you have to follow the instructions of the relevant Instagram post that you can find both at the XC Cycling and the bikecave.eu Instagram accounts. Apparently, their most obvious features are that the XC Cycling slave cylinders are fully customizable and repairable, but we've already discussed about that in the previous videos. Also, the fact that they are as lightweight as possible is another characteristic that we have already discussed in a previous video, but it's also worth mentioning in this one. You could say that most of their parts are quite over-engineered in order to reduce their overall weight, and it worked, making them the lightest slave cylinders available. Anyways, today we are going to focus on some not so obvious characteristics of the XC Cycling slave cylinders that make them unique. So the first one is that they are designed so as not to be mass produced, so as to make sure that each slave cylinder gets the care and attention that it needs so as to work as perfectly as possible. More specifically, each part gets through thorough quality testing, ensuring that all critical dimensions are within the specified tolerances. This ensures that you won't have any noticeable brake fluid leaks. However, keep in mind that a little bit of brake fluid will always seep out of the seals and evaporate, as the pistons of the slave cylinders and the levers move back and forth, but it's not something that you will be able to actually notice, and it will take a long time until you need to rebleed your brakes in order to compensate for the lost fluid. If you need more information about the maintenance protocol of the XC Cycling slave cylinders, you can check out their comprehensive manual that you can find at the XC Cycling website. Also, having a complete manual is another unique feature that allows you to properly maintain your slave cylinders, but we've already talked about that in the previous videos. Additionally to the quality inspection for every single part of the slave cylinders, I'm also hand finishing each one of them so as to make sure that there are no sharp corners in intricate spots that are difficult to reach while machining. Also, at that point, I'm visually inspecting each part for any inconsistencies. Inspections and quality control as well as the hand finishing of the XC Cycling slave cylinders give them a personal touch, ensuring that everything is perfect, and this is something that the mass-produced versions wouldn't have. Apart from these personal touches, another operation that I decided to go through to ensure that the XC Cycling slave cylinders would be the best slave cylinders possible is that every slave cylinder is internally coated with tungsten disulfide to lower the friction of the piston as much as possible. Tungsten disulfide is a material with an extremely low coefficient of friction, and it's perfect for this application. Also, I've developed a special seals grease for the XC Cycling slave cylinders, which is actually a mixture of silicolium grease and tungsten disulfide. Silicolium grease is the best seals grease out there, and I was already using it as a seals grease for my levers for many years after trying every different seal grease I could find. Adding tungsten disulfide to make it even better and actually using it on the piston seals of the XC Cycling slave cylinders make them very responsive while protecting and renewing the low friction coating on them. It has to be mentioned that if you get a set of XC Cycling slave cylinders, they are coming assembly with a tungsten disulfide enhanced silicolium grease to ensure that you'll have the best possible experience right out of the box. Also, you can find both the plain and the tungsten disulfide enhanced silicolium grease at our eshop at bikecave.eu. Having discussed about all these characteristics, let's get back to the fact that they are not mass produced. So my plan is to keep the production in the range of 2 to 4 sets per week, at least at this early stage, so as to be able to personally make each slave cylinder and make sure that everything is up to the set standards. But this may change a little bit if demand for these unique slave cylinders rise. However, I'm not planning to mass produce them, as I want to keep everything that has the XC Cycling logo made locally in Greece and in some cases manufactured directly by me. This gives me the freedom to control the production processes, ensuring that everything from the used materials to the cutting tools and the overall manufacturing procedure is perfect, resulting to products that are as good as possible. However, the first batch is going to be a bit larger and different, as it's consisted out of 15 sets of limited edition hand-polished slave cylinders. After that first batch, the XC Cycling slave cylinders will have visible CNC finishing toolpaths, giving them a more industrial look. The last characteristic that is worth mentioning is that the XC Cycling slave cylinders are fully recyclable, as you can easily take them apart and recycle each part separately based on their material. Nevertheless, I have to mention that if you ever plan to get new ones, you could keep the internal parts as spare parts, or you could also give them to another rider that may use the XC Cycling slave cylinders in the future. However, if you want to recycle them anyways, but you don't know how to recycle each part, you can send them back to the XC Cycling return address by following our take back program and will take care of them and properly recycle each part. The last characteristic of the slave cylinders, and in fact of every XC Cycling product, is that they are being directly sold via eshop at bikecave.eu. This allows us to keep manufacturing everything here in Greece and ensure the best possible quality on our products while keeping the prices as fair as possible. My goal is not to make the cheapest products. On the other hand, my goal is to develop, design and manufacture innovative, unique, high quality products for bike trials, even if that means that some products will not be on the cheap side of the spectrum. Anyways, that's it for today's video, and I hope that this solves some of the questions that you may have about the upcoming XC Cycling slave cylinders. However, if you want to learn anything else that I forgot to mention in my latest videos about the XC Cycling slave cylinders, feel free to ask it in the comment section below. Also, keep an eye on our social media stories for the final countdown for the XC Cycling slave cylinders release, and don't forget to participate to our giveaway in order to win a set of slave cylinders of your choice. Thanks so much for subscribing and watching, and good luck on the giveaway. Bye!